Hi, everyone, and welcome to an overview of the assessment, just so that you have a clear understanding of some of the terminology that's being used. We've just got a very short video for you that you can hopefully just navigate your way through the waters of the assessment that you're seeing in this document. So just very quickly, a reminder that we have basically focused in our support documents on two forms of assessment: formative and summative. Formative is really the world that you live in the most. It's the place that we start just to unpack things, give them straight facts, let them learn the basics. And then from there, we try to move them forward so that we can see what have they learned, how are they able to put those concepts together. So about 85% of all of the work that you do with students lives in the world of formative. I won't read the screens through, I'll let you do that on your own time. But this is the place for students not only to learn the material, but to make mistakes, learn from their mistakes, move forward before we do any kind of serious assessment, which we're going to use for reporting. And that's the summative part. So summative is that smaller chunk that we've done after 85% of our work. Our time is being spent really unpacking, making sure the students are able to navigate new scenarios. Once we're ready to say that they're going to do an exam that now allows them to independently show us what they've learned, this is about 10 to 15% of your work. So this is where we get our report card marks from. The formative is what gives you shows you what you've done over time with the students. In our document, you will see in the assessment column behind certain assessments, you'll see the words surface and deep. Surface and deep refer to the level of type of question that's contained within, or activity that's contained within, that assessment. Surface refers to that beginning piece where I'm just teaching you for the first time a new concept. I'm teaching you the facts, the pieces that go along with that concept. Everybody has to get to surface at some point. You have to start there, because I can't really add things, I can't combine things, I can't go deeper thinking until I have those basic facts behind me. So that's what we call surface level. It's very much supported, it's very much scaffolded, it's the factual pieces, and we'll unpack that a little bit more. Deep talks about taking those facts now and combining them together and really saying, how do I apply all those facts into a new scenario, something that you haven't done in an example? And I'm going to still do examples in deep. I'm going to have starting deep questions where I'm just going to say, now that we've learned this and this and this, how are we going to start to put these together? How are they related to one another? What relationship do they have to the understanding that we have in that particular cusp that we're trying to teach the student? The transfer is what we call the summative. So once I've done lots of work in deep, most of my work is happening over there, I'm going to ask you a new question outside of any scenario that I've given you now, and I'm going to ask you to independently solve that question. That's what we would consider a transfer question. A transfer can look a lot like a deep. It's just that it's a new scenario. I've had lots of experience in the world of deep already, not one or two opportunities, way more than that, before I get into the transfer. Again, you can read through some of these pieces as you go through. So the surface really becomes things like, I have lots of facts in my different concepts. So I might have facts that belong to the green box. So I teach you a fact, I've put it into that green box, it's a file. I teach you another fact, maybe it belongs in the blue box. I teach you another fact, it belongs in the pink box. I teach you another one, it belongs in the blue box. And we just keep going. We teach them all those knowledge sides, those factual pieces, terminology, vocabulary, meanings, all of those pieces falling into the surface area. So, but at some point though, I've acquired a lot of folders and pieces of paper that are sitting inside those boxes. So how does the green box relate to the blue box? Or how does the blue box relate to the pink box? Or how do all three of them relate? So I might take a file out of each one of these and say, let's look at what each one of those has to say and how are they connected? So these different colored backgrounds you're seeing here have no more significance other than to say, maybe this is the first time I'm starting to make a connection. Maybe it's not between three, it's only between two of the boxes. And then I start to make it between three. And now that I've tried that out a couple of times, I'm going to get to even a deeper level. Maybe I take 2 or 3 from the blue and 2 and 3 from the pink and from the green, and I start making connections and how are they related and where are the comparisons and what are the differences. It's those relationships. It's building the relationships between all of those individual files that we put in these boxes. How do they start to get unpacked? How do I get a new scenario thrown at me every time, and which file should I pull them out of, and how will I connect them between all of those different files? That's what deep refers to. And this is why we spend so much time in here. Just giving me the facts and giving me one opportunity to connect them is not going to be enough for me to, first of all, consolidate that thinking, and certainly not enough to assure you that I know what I'm doing. When I want to do an assessment, it means I've done tons of opportunities over here, and now I'm ready to do some independent ones. And that doesn't mean that when I'm in deep, I'm always doing it with a partner. As I start getting towards the end of this deep, I should be able to do some independently on my own without you standing over me, without you telling me each step to do. So that's the flag for you that I'm ready to do a summative or a test that you're going to mark. So when we talk about what happens in Surface, we're also talking about pre-assessment. What pre-assessments have you done with the students to find out where they're at? You yourself need to know where to start. What are the files that need to be really taught in here and get put away into each of those boxes? So pre-assessment is going to be really important. This is the whole formative piece that comes in here, all that work that they're doing from Surface into the first deep, into several different kinds of deep. And then we move into the transfer, the summative. So this sheet just simply shows you, or slide simply shows you, a summation of all of those 3 put together. So again, I'll give you some time at the end and you can just go through those on your own and refer back to these as needed. These next 3 slides will unpack each one of these a little bit more specifically. And it will talk about what are some things that I would look for, like words like state, recall, compare, analyze, and compare could also be deep as well. Organize. Some of these are just straightforward. You can organize them only in one way. Well, that's pretty surface, right? If it's only one way that I can do it, then I've either got it or I don't. That's kind of a surface indicator right off the bat. So here are some other things that I would look for that sit inside of Surface. Talking about compare and contrast might be in a single item. How do I compare things that are within a single concept, compare and contrast? When I get into multiple concepts, I could move that compare and contrast into deep. So when I look at the math, we're finding a lot of people are looking at knowledge and saying, well, I just need to teach that knowledge side, and that's all the surface stuff. And it is. There's a lot of surface stuff that lives over in knowledge, but it's not only surface that lives in knowledge. Right? I do need to know the knowledge pieces, but you also have to remember that as teachers, we're responsible for the verbs that live on the other side and to assess those verbs. Some verbs are very surface level. Some verbs go much deeper than that. And so we need to look at the understanding, which is the most important piece of the whole CUS. It tells us what we are actually going to achieve with the students. And often the wording that lives in the understanding helps to unpack the surface from the deep at the same time. Here I've just shown you that recall of multiplication number facts, it's just that, it's recall. Any recall, whether it stops at the beginning of the cusp or at the end of the cusp, it's still recall. That is still surface level. How I get to that recall is a strategy that goes deeper, and that might be looking a little bit different. So the multiplication table shows basic recall facts on it. Do I want the students just to take it and memorize it? No, I want them to have some strategies that go along with it. But these partnered together are surface level. When I look at the deep, I'm really looking at, can they demonstrate that relationship? Can they explain the relationship between those boxes? So again, some words that you might see in there and things that I might look for, not exclusive only to deep, but you will find that they very much link to a deep scenario. So if I take that same one that we just looked at, here was our sort of surface level. But when I look at the understanding, I see multiplication and division. Well, I see those in all of these. So I've kind of highlighted those as well. And I could have put them in here as well. But the word related came in. How are these related to one another? Examine patterns. Patterns is a relationship. When I look down here, it says talk about recognizing families. What are families? So how do I recognize a family? If I know the 4s, how does that relate to the 8s? And so on. So again, that word relate shows up over here. Fact, families, related, multiplication and division. So these become our deep. I need to know something about the math facts. I need to have strategies. And although strategies isn't a word in here, it's implied that as teachers, we're going to teach the strategies to unpack fact families so I can use them to recognize and examine patterns. So not everything is just straight surface and then deep. You will have verbs that are surface level and verbs that are deep level. And then the transfer one is the summative piece. So again, there are ideas that here that are listed for what are some ways that I can demonstrate transfer of understanding. That's not the only ones, they're just examples that you can use. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact any one of the 3 people here. Reach out. If you have any feedback on the assessment questions, please feel free to reach out and just send them to one of us and we will connect with you. Thanks very much.